compared to Saturday. And with the light winds, though, it should still feel relatively pleasant. As we go through the end of the day tomorrow, we are going to see the cloud thickening across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, perhaps a few spells of drizzly rain likely, and the wind strengthening here. But across England and Wales, we're going to hold on to the clear skies and the winds will stay pretty light. As a result, as we go into Monday morning, we're likely to see a fairly widespread frost across much of England and Wales, even in towns and cities, temperatures dipping a little bit below freezing for some, but milder further north and west where we have that thicker cloud. As we go through Monday itself then, a cold frosty start for many in England and Wales, and it is going to stay mostly bright, particularly towards the southeast, but thickening clouds starting to push into northern parts of England and Wales as we go through the afternoon. Further changeable weather to come across the north as we go through this week, but further south staying drier but chilly nights with some frost and fog.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News. I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. For the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The family of a missing mother of two have insisted there's no evidence whatsoever that she fell into the river after the 45-year-old disappeared last Friday. Investigating officers say they believe Nicola Bully fell into the river and there's no evidence of anything suspicious. Our national reporter Theo Chikomba is in St Michael's on Wire, where she went missing. Theo, what more can you tell us?
Yes, it's been a difficult few days for the family and, of course, friends who've been in and around the village looking for what could be potential evidence of where Nicola is. The mother of two was walking in this area where I am right now. Along this path, she kept on going, and we know where that bench is, where the phone was found and where her dog was found. They believe she was last seen in that area. The police, Lancashire Police, and a number of agencies have been working every day trying to find clues about what could have happened. Just a couple of moments ago here, a search team was operating on the side of the riverbank. Members of the community here say they're not giving up, having heard from some of her friends today and over the last few days. They say it's a particularly difficult time for the family, and they won't be giving up until they find out what's happened.
Theo, thank you very much indeed. Now, health leaders are calling on the government to show initiative to end the ongoing series of strikes. The NHS Confederation says the health service will struggle to clear backlogs or improve emergency care unless action's taken. They're warning of even longer waiting times if the current situation doesn't improve. Thousands of nurses and ambulance workers will walk out on Monday in what many are calling the biggest strike day the NHS will have ever seen. Former medical director Dr. Andrew Vallance says the ball is in the government's court.
Of course, they are worried about their salaries, but it's a feeling of lack of recognition of the work that they do, and then you see, and they look at other workers in the NHS who are desk bound, who are working normal days, and they're working 8 or 12-hour shifts without breaks, and they say, why can't we get better recognition for what we do?
16 to 49-year-olds are being encouraged to get their autumn COVID booster before the NHS scales down its vaccine programme to focus on at-risk patients. The NHS says hundreds of thousands of appointments are available up until the 12th of February for those within that age bracket. After this date, the jabs will only be offered to those considered to be at risk of serious illness. COVID infections in the UK have dropped for a fourth week in a row. The bodies of two British aid volunteers who died during a humanitarian evacuation have been returned to Ukrainian authorities. The families of Chris Parry and Andrew Bagshaw say the pair were attempting to rescue an elderly woman from the eastern town of Solidar in early January. The bodies were returned as part of a prisoner swap between Russia and Ukraine, involving nearly 200 people on both sides. And it comes as the Prime Minister spoke with President Zelensky on the phone earlier this afternoon. Rishi Sunak says he's committed to ensuring military equipment reaches the front line as quickly as possible, including tanks. Ukrainian soldiers began training in the UK earlier this week on Challenger 2 battle tanks, which Britain has agreed to supply to the government in Kyiv. US officials say a second suspected Chinese spy balloon's been spotted moving over Latin America. It's after one was seen flying over sensitive military sites in the United States yesterday. Now, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has postponed a planned visit to Beijing, calling the move a clear violation of US sovereignty. And he said he'd be prepared, though, to resume that visit when conditions allow. China maintains the balloon was, in fact, a civilian weather airship which had been blown off course. The Princess of Wales has launched a photo-sharing campaign on social media to raise awareness of the importance of early years development. Kate led the campaign by posting a photograph of herself as a baby with her father. It's all part of her Shaping Us campaign, which has drawn support from the likes of rapper Professor Green and the presenter Fern Cotton, as she's hoping people will follow suit over the weekend. And this is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens, as always. But now, let's return to Nana.
It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Oh, dearie, dearie me. The Sussexes do not appear to have been invited to the A-list do of all do's, the who's who in the world of celebrity, the queen of celebrity, and indeed Hollywood. Billionaire Oprah Winfrey's unofficial 69th birthday bash, organised by makeup brand Anastasia Beverly Hills and in tandem with their 25th anniversary celebration. I wanted to be Oprah until that ghastly interview. Remember that? The one where the Duke and Duchess of Montecito gaslit everybody and led the world to believe that there was a racist in the royal family, with apparent concerns and conversation about how dark Archie's skin was going to be when he was born. Oprah recoiled in shock. The American audience and many here in the UK fell for it hook, line and sinker, and there was worldwide speculation who in the royal family had made these remarks which were deemed as racist. Only for Harry to reveal a few years later, in an interview with his pal Tom Bradbury whilst promoting the release of his book Spare, that they, him and Meghan, didn't actually mention the word racism. The couple even picked up a Ripple of Hope award for standing up to racism. And there, Harry now was denying its very existence in the royal family and blaming the British press for creating the narrative. Remember their wedding? After ditching her niece because of a claim that turned out to be false and having only one member of her family in attendance, her mother, Meghan Markle invited Oprah and a load of A-listers which she clearly had never met. But the organisers of Oprah's unofficial bash did not return the favour. It seems that Hollywood may well be going off the couple. And to rub salt into the wound, Kim Kardashian, who was invited, posted this to Oprah on Instagram. "Happy birthday, Oprah. Sharon Stone said it best last night, toasting you, that you mean the world to the world. Happy birthday." So in between blackmailing the royal family with warnings that Harry has more in the tank after the publication of his embarrassingly candid memoir, and telling the royal family that they know what they've done and all they need to do now is apologise and they will stop, which, judging by their response to Jeremy Clarkson's apology, I doubt is true, they now appear to be issuing the conditions at which they will attend the King's coronation. That's good of them. The King has enlisted the help of Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the person Meghan claimed and on Oprah that he married them 3 days before the actual wedding, which, by the way, would have been illegal, promoting the Archbishop to call her out. So King Charles wants the Archbishop to smooth things over. OK, let me make something clear. I, as a member of the British public, don't want you and Meghan there. It's a state event, not a family affair, which has ultimately been paid for by the British taxpayers, the people who live in the country you're dissing, and the country that has paid for your privileged upbringing and afforded you your title, the very title you're trading on and lining your pockets with, earning you millions, from which, as I understand from your book, you wanted redundancy money for choosing to leave. You brag about killing 25 Taliban, and don't try and say it wasn't a brag. I've read the book. That's how it came across to me. You claim revealing this information was to save people from suicide. Well, that's nonsense. Then comparing people to chess pieces is distasteful. Nobody gives their kill count out. All this has done is created a huge security risk. In Harry and Meghan's quest for privacy, we've had to endure a dreadful podcast, a whinge fest of a so-called documentary, and an embarrassing book, which, let's face it, nobody would be interested in if Harry wasn't a prince. In The Spectator, Cara Kennedy points out their trade-in of lifelong duty of being working royalty for the money and fame of being celebrities hasn't paid off. She quotes a Hollywood insider who said, "The Sussexes equal drama. Everybody over here is starting to realise that they never intended on having a quiet life." Well, they're yours now. You can keep them. They've burnt their bridges here. Well, come on, I couldn't resist. Before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, can the Tories turn this mess around? Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been at the helm for just over 100 days. He sort of celebrated that this week, which I don't know, is that worthy of celebration? Well, according to a recent survey, more than 70% of the people in this country think that he won't be in number 10 after the next general election. So can Sunak turn this around? Then stay tuned at 4:50. It's Royal Roundup time. Royal biographer Angela Levin will be live in the studio with all the latest from the royal household. As the King's coronation approaches, speculation is mounting as to whether Prince Harry and Meghan will be in attendance. We'll discuss that and more. And then at 5, it's this week's difficult conversation. Now, according to the Office of National Statistics, at least 45,000 people died as a result of COVID within a care home setting. Tony Stoll's 87-year-old mother, Antonia, was one of those people. She passed away in May 2020 after being put on end-of-life care in a residential care home. Antonia's family claim that they did not give any consent to this end-of-life treatment. Tony will be live in the studio to tell us his story. That's on the way in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Lizzie, I'm going to start with you.
Yes.
Because you've met Meghan Markle.
Met her? We were best friends.
Yes,
she
were.
She ghosted me.
Did she? Yeah.
Yes.
Does that to a lot of people, actually, by the way.
Yeah, Duke and Duchess of Diddums, I call them, Diddums. I could just imagine her face when she knew she wasn't invited, can't you? H, can you believe I'm not invited? Get, on the phone, get my PAs on this. Why aren't I there? Well, I'm sorry, those tables have turned. And I think this snub shows that the tide is turning for them across the pond. But let's face it, would you invite a friend to a birthday bash that you know is going to put you possibly in their book, talks about you, makes lies up? You know, they've seen what she's like and they're just thinking, no, we don't want anything to do with her. I'm sorry, that snub speaks volumes.
What do you think, Sam Dowler? You love them.
Well, no, I don't love them. But first of all, I don't necessarily think it's a snub. Because,
you don't?
Well, no,
Why
because
not?
it was the 25th anniversary of Anastasia Beverly Hill's massive makeup brand. So all the people like J-Lo, Sharon Stone,
yes,
you know, they're all big. They're all
Oprah's birthday.
They're A-listers, and obviously, had Meghan not married Harry, she wouldn't have even got a chance of
No,
going
of course.
to such a party
No.
anyway, because, you know, she was a two-bit actress. I mean, like, obviously, part of me wishes to be a fly on the wall when she saw the picture in the morning going,
she would.
But, do you know what I mean? In some sort of Joan Crawford...
That's what you do when I don't invite you to one of my parties. So.
Yeah, all right, babes. Anyway, but I think...
that when Gary Lineker didn't invite you to it.
Exactly. His Christmas drinks, I was off the Christmas list.
But the thing is, these people are on the upper echelons of, like, you know, Hollywood A-list, and with the King's coronation coming up, they don't want to be seen to be taking sides or anything like that.
Oh, you think that's what it's about?
Well, I think it could, it could be embarrassing, because especially, obviously they love William and Kate in America, and if Oprah's got Meghan and Harry like around them, hanging around socially, it looks, to William and Harry, to William and Kate would be like,
Well, but I think that Meghan, but perhaps Oprah sort of recalled slightly when Harry went, racism, what racism?
Oh.
Yeah. In that Tom Bradbury interview. I mean, because that's everybody who supported his sort of cause, because let's be honest, it did sound like he was saying somebody's racist. That's kind of where we go when you're making concerns about how dark someone's skin is.
And it was
that is
planned.
clearly something that's got to do with racism.
Yeah, because Meghan, obviously, when you watch the interview, Meghan says it and Oprah goes...
Really? How do you do the face?
I want to do the face. So, here we go. Give me a single shot. Bring it in.
Yeah, but do you not think Oprah just thought, gosh, I had the big scoop here, the big interview.
Yeah.
Half of it is total lies and rubbish. She must be thinking they made a fool of me.
Well, they did.
Not surprised they weren't invited.
It's the same to Tom Bradbury as well. He's not shown his face for a while. But if you just joined us, welcome on board. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up in this week's difficult conversation, one man's fight for justice for his mother. Tony Stoll is accusing a care home of putting his mum on end-of-life care without consent. Hear his story just after 5. But after the break, Rishi Sunak's been at the helm for just 100 days, but a poll has suggested that more than 70% of people don't think he'll still be on top at the end of the next election. So what do you think? Does he have what it takes to turn this mess around? We'll be back after this.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello and welcome. If you just tuned in, where have you been? Don't worry, you haven't missed too much, just the first 17 minutes. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, before the break, we were discussing Meghan and Harry. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Hi, Nana. I think just about everyone is getting fed up with the Sussexes. I think they must be. Jenny says most of us don't want them there. He would do well to listen to Prince William on this. And Maurice says, I agree, Nana. The gruesome twosome should not be invited to the coronation. Well, there you have it. That's our views. That's what they think. If you think differently, let me know. Thank you for that. But right now, it is time for our great British debate this hour. And I'm asking, can the Tories turn this mess around? Rishi Sunak has now been in office as Prime Minister for just over 100 days. But how well has he managed his tenure? Despite his time in number 10 being relatively short, I won't make a comment about that, but it is in your mind. Don't be heightist. I'm not going to be heightist. Rishi Sunak has faced more than his fair share of controversy. His deputy, Dominic Raab, has been subjected to 8 formal complaints of bullying, with 24 civil servants involved, according to reports. And most recently, the sacked Nadine Zahawi from his government position as Tory party chair after an inquiry found that he'd breached the ministerial code. Sunak also lost a cabinet minister in November when Sir Gavin Williamson, well, he needed to go, I don't know why he was even there, resigned amidst bullying allegations. He even received a fixed penalty notice for not wearing a seatbelt, becoming the second serving Prime Minister to break the law while in office. A completely unnecessary thing. How could he be so... I don't know. Right, all this whilst trying to halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut hospital waiting lists and stop the migrant crossings. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, can the Tories turn this mess around? Let's take a look at that pledge of stopping the boats. How has Sunak and his party fared during his first 100 days? I'm joined now by a local journalist, Kim Rai. Kim, I hear you have first-hand experience of the true impact of these crossings. You've taken footage of migrants arriving into Kent. Talk me through what you've seen.
Well, the first thing I can say about this is it's completely unsustainable. The figures do not reflect the number of people that are coming in via our beaches here under the radar. Most people see footage of RNLI lifeboats bringing them in, Border Force. That's not always the case. They come in on the quiet, sometimes late at night, early in the morning when it's dark, and they disappear into the landscape, and they've even been known to do this during the daylight as well.
See, now...
So the whole thing just goes on, and it's unsustainable.
So now they're saying that they're doing something, I don't know what, something seems to be happening, they're processing people faster. What have you actually seen happening there? Because, have you seen much in the way of security and the government stepping up things recently?
No. Total lack of security. I can give you examples. You've seen some of the footage there. I was on the beach one day, 50 of them came in, mostly men. I think they were all men, probably one woman. And they were coming up the beach. They were being intercepted by charity workers, given packages. They were then lined up by the lifeboat station and patted down by the police and told they were under arrest. Meanwhile, they're still being given packages by the charity workers. We don't know what they're in there. We can see it's clothing. But at this point, my argument is they have not been searched. Sometimes they are put straight on the coach without being searched at all. And I've seen the police stand by and watch the charity workers. As soon as they get off the boat, the charity workers push down to the front. We're not supposed to be on the shoreline when this is happening. When those boats are unloading, we're told to keep out of the way. They force their way in front and they start giving the packages as soon as the migrants are alighting the boat. And the police just stand and watch.
So how do you feel when you're hearing people like Rishi Sunak saying, we're going to stop the boats? Do you feel that he will actually be able to do that? Or do you feel that the problem is way beyond him and he can't promise that?
More likely to believe in the man in the moon, to be honest, because it's not happening. We've heard this before. We've heard this from his predecessors. Nothing ever gets done. The local councils seem to be on their side. The government seems to be on their side. We who speak out against it are labelled with isms. I don't have an ism. I have friends who are legal migrants, and they are just as appalled at what's going on as I am. In fact, they rant more about it than I do. And, you know, like I said, 1,180 so far this year. We had double the amount last year from the year before that. And we're still counting. But having said that, this is the Migration Watch website, figures that I'm taking this from, which is an independent source. And when you look at those figures, that's not counting the numbers coming up the beach. We see them walking through the town. We see them getting into cars. Sometimes they've got taxis waiting for them or people to pick them up. They've obviously got GPS on the phones, which have been preloaded by their helpers on the other side of the channel with details of where they can get the freebies from. People are appalled by this because we have a huge homeless problem, even in this area. I know people who've been evicted recently from a house and installed somewhere about 20 miles away in the most horrendous conditions. Meanwhile, these people are enjoying the luxury of four-star hotel bedrooms.
Well, Kim, I mean, look, we the taxpayers are paying for it. The government needs to get their finger out. It doesn't sound like Rishi Sunak's 100 days have even touched the sides of that. Kim Wright, thank you very much for joining me. She's a journalist out there in Kent. Really good to talk to you. Well, we'll keep in touch with Kim and find out exactly how that's progressing. But we have reached out to Care for Calais for the statement, but they have not responded. On their website, though, it does say that we are not politicians. We are ordinary people like you who believe that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. We are on the ground with the refugees every single day and are respectful of their common humanity and response to their needs. We use our on-the-ground presence and relationship with the refugee community to provide the much-needed help that other organisations are not able to. Well, now to discuss the wider issues facing the Tories, I'm joined by Deputy Leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane, former Labour Party MP Stephen Pound, political commentator Reem Ibrahim. Right, well, I'm going to start with you, Stephen Pound, in the middle there.
Hi there. The question is, can the Tories turn it around? Well, for Labour to win, and I think, basically it's a two-horse race, would require the biggest turnaround in British politics, for the last 100 and God knows how many years. I think the question is, at the moment, the Tories are desperately unpopular. But we're not in the era anymore when people vote with a sort of family loyalty. We're in the era of retail politics. And if you look at for example, Reform, they're up around 6, 7, 8%. That could cost the Tories some seats. I think the Liberal explosion, if you like, or the increase in their vote was very much based on a hatred and antipathy towards Boris Johnson in particular. And I don't honestly think that Ed Davey has sealed the deal. So at the moment, William Hague did this marvellous rah-rah speech down at Chequers last week, and he said, if you think this was bad, you should have been around in 1992. The difference is, in 1992, Neil Kinnock didn't have the same reach across as Keir Starmer has. Keir Starmer may be accused of being bland and boring, but frankly, after we've had Johnson and we've had all the bizarre behaviours in the last few months, I think I could do with a bit of bland. So the Tories can win the next election. By all means, of course they can. I don't think they will. But, nobody should be complacent at the moment.
Well, let's go to Rebecca Jane. Rebecca Jane, what do you think? Can they turn this mess around?
They can't turn this mess around, and I don't want bland. I want change and action.
So no, I mean, we're talking about a party here who are absolutely embroiled in scandal from start to finish, especially from the COVID times, dishing out all the contracts that they did to their friends, Partygate, people that have been sacked for their tax affairs, you know, and we're even talking about porn in the House of Commons, for goodness sakes. They can't turn it around. They shouldn't turn it around. As the public, we should never forget what they've done. Because whilst we look at all of the sleaze and the scandal that surround them, what they also did in the process was completely and utterly destroy our country. I don't want bland. I want change. I want action. And I want time for completely new government.
Well, they might say that they didn't hand out contracts to their friends, but, you know, if you can imagine it, it's the people that they knew that were closest. I mean, that's just in their defence. Let's go to Reem Ibrahim. She's a political commentator. Reem.
Yeah, I mean, like, I want change, but I don't want action. I want the government to do less. And I think that what the past 12 years have really shown us is that the government tends to do things really quite badly, and that actually, when you bring power back to the people, that's where the good things happen. Look, I think that when we're thinking about the next election, you know, I think we're almost certain to lose. The past 12 years of Tory government has been complete and utter failure. You know, we've got Brexit done. That was probably one of the only good things that the government have done recently. At the moment, we have the highest tax burden in 70 years. We've got migrants coming in their thousands. We've got an NHS that is at its breaking point. There is nothing conservative about this government. So unless Rishi Sunak really does Hail Mary and become the tax-cutting conservative that he should be, unfortunately, I think we are going to lose the next election.
But Rebecca Jane's shaking her head because you said we got Brexit done. She doesn't agree with you.
No, not in the slightest. Of course not. You know, I'm UKIP, for goodness sakes. If there's one thing that the Conservatives have not done, it's got Brexit done. In fact, what they did was make an absolute shambles of it, completely and utterly trash it, because they never wanted it in the first place. We were wrong to hand over the trust like we did and to stand candidates down and all the rest of it. It will never happen again, and we should never, ever trust that they're going to do anything. They didn't get Brexit done. It's not done, and it needs to get done now.
But if you hadn't stood by, then we could have been looking at a Labour government, and Stephen would have been happy with that, wouldn't you? Is he frozen? He's frozen. You couldn't tell. He's frozen. Stephen's mouth's not moving. This is hilarious. Reem, take over from him.
No, I think that what UKIP did when they stood down was the right thing, because otherwise, again, we could have, you know, seen those votes go and sway to the Labour Party, which would have been even worse if we had Corbyn in power. So, look, I understand Rebecca's sentiment that Brexit, you know, by definition, hasn't been completed. The issues in Northern Ireland haven't been resolved. So, by definition, Brexit isn't a done and dusted deal. However, I think that UKIP is sort of a party of the past. We are an independent country now. We have left the European Union officially. Yes, there are some things and some things that we sort of sort out to get it all finished. But actually, we did leave the European Union, and we left because of the Conservative Party.
She called you party of the past, Rebecca Jane. Did you hear that? Rebecca, are you there? Party of the past. Where's she gone?
It's a shock. I mean, we are certainly not a party of the past. Yes, we have been a lot quieter, but no, we're not a party of the past. We've got a lot to do, especially the first thing that we obviously want to start with is the migrant crisis, but we do need to get Brexit done. The young lady says a lot of absolutely fantastic things, and thank you for that, but we're not done. However, I think that she'd be exceptionally moving over to a different party.
Let's go back to Stephen. Stephen, you froze for a while. It was quite nice.
A couple of things. Sorry, you know and I know it's the economy. The economy is the key thing. If you actually look at what people are worried about and thinking about, you'll very often find that things that people think that is going to matter aren't the case. Look, the economy is in a very weird place at the moment. The FTSE is up in the high 70s. It's like 76, 77%. God alone knows how we're doing so well from FTSE. So that's brilliant for savers, really good for people with pensions, people who've got a broad portfolio of interest. However, if you're trying to buy a property, if you're paying for a mortgage, you're up in 4%, the interest rate. And I think the biggest horror for the next election is going to be housing. I don't think it's going to be migrants. I don't think it's going to be any of the question about, you know, whether we can sort out Brexit or not. It's going to be housing, because that affects every single person. And unfortunately, the government simply do not have a handle on this. So I think it will be the economy, stupid, but I think it's going to be a very, very sort of kind of sort of broken down election this time. There's going to be different results in different parts of the country, without any doubt. I think the SNP are less powerful than they've been for a long time.
Of course, there'll be different results in different parts of the country, and the housing issue will be will be exacerbated if we keep having this situation with migration. Listen, Stephen, we've run out of time there. You had your bit and you just froze on me. Stephen Pound, former Labour Party MP,
I froze on you.
Commentator,
Never.
Go away, and Deputy Leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane. Lovely to talk to you all. Thank you very much for your thoughts. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll continue with our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, can the Tories turn this around? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Then stay tuned, because coming up at 5 o'clock, it's this week's Difficult Conversation. One man has launched legal action against a care home after accusing them of putting his mother on end-of-life care without his family's consent during the pandemic. I'll be joined by Tony Stool, live in the studio, alongside his lawyer, who will be taking us through his ordeal. First, though, let's get your latest news headlines.
Yes, it's 4:31. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The family of a missing mother of two, Nicola Bulley, has insisted there's no evidence whatsoever to support the police theory she fell into the river. Officers investigating her disappearance believe Nicola fell while walking her dog into the River Wire, but they are continuing the search. Ms Bulley vanished in Lancashire last Friday morning. Her phone was found on a bench with her dog nearby. Police say they're not treating her disappearance as suspicious, but as a tragic case of a missing person. Her friend, Heather, though, says it's too much for the family.
As a friend of Nikki, I am struggling to see how we can take a theory as a conclusion. Nikki, we need evidence to know where Nikki is, and as far as I'm aware, they have not found any evidence. So Paul and Nick's parents and sister last night, they're heartbroken. They are living a living hell. And on top of that, they have all the speculation that comes out to deal with. It's too much, it's not fair.
These of two British aid volunteers who died during a humanitarian evacuation have been returned to Ukrainian authorities. The families of Chris Parry and Andrew Bagshaw say the pair were attempting to rescue an elderly woman from the eastern town of Solidar in early January. The bodies were returned as part of a prisoner swap. Ukraine swapped 116 of its people in exchange for 63 returned to Russia. The Princess of Wales has launched a photo-sharing campaign on social media to raise awareness of the importance of early years development. Kate led the campaign by posting a photograph of herself as a baby with her father. It's all part of her Shaping Us campaign, which has drawn support from the likes of rapper Professor Green and presenter Fern Cotton. She's hoping people will follow suit over the weekend. TV online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. But now it's back to Nana Akua.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
My
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's coming up to 37 minutes after 4 o'clock. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. It is now time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, can the Tories turn this mess around? Rishi Sunak has now been in office as Prime Minister for just over 100 days. But how well has he managed during his time? Despite this being a relatively short time, Rishi has faced more than his fair share of controversy. We've got the business with Dominic Raab at the moment, who's been subjected to 8 formal complaints of bullying. Then, of course, we had Nadeem Zahawi, who was sacked from his government position as Tory party chair after an inquiry found that he breached the ministerial code. And all this whilst trying to halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut hospital waiting lists and stop the migrant crossings. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, can the Tories turn this mess around? Let's discuss that with my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Sam, can Rishi clean up the mess that he created?
Rishi is presiding over a party in chaos. They're drowning in incompetence and corruption and, you know, this is a country in economic stagnation and a bitter and angry population that just want to, you know, turn against the government in power at the moment. I mean, look, I voted for Theresa May. I voted for David Cameron.
You voted for Theresa May?
Did you? Yeah.
What?
And I even went canvassing with Grant Shapps because my dad was a Tory councillor at the time.
Oh, really?
Wow. And the party then bears no recollection to
they're like Labour.
No, any benevolence has gone and it's been replaced by cruelty and mismanagement and intolerance. And you know, I don't want any part of it. And I think you know that Rishi is at the helm. I mean, for goodness sakes, we've had Cameron, May, Johnson, Truss, Sunak. I mean, in quick succession. I mean, it's outrageous, and I agree with Rebecca Jane, who was just on. Like, you know, it's time for a change. Not her type of change, but it's time for a change.
Lizzie.
Yeah. Well, the Tories getting in, and for Rishi, there's no hope. Bob Hope. I'm afraid Bob's sadly left the building. There's no future for the Tory party. I'm afraid. I never thought I'd say this. It's a complete moral. Their policies are just gone. Just disastrous, and we've got to think of Rishi, how he actually came in to be Prime Minister. I mean, he is a fraud in my eyes. He parachuted... he was not voted in, and he parachuted in, backstabbed Boris, and I'm afraid he isn't liked within the party because of that. And no one can forget that betrayal, and people don't trust him. Well, I'm afraid when you see him, I mean, in interviews, it's like Vicar of Dibley doing a sermon.
Do you think?
There's no charisma. He said he's going to fix the boats. I'm going to stop the boats. Well, how is he going to stop the boats? I mean, the root problem is the gangsters, and they need the fast-track courts to stop it and get those boats turned back. If they're, you know, this is just out of hand. How much money? 6.8 million.
Well, listen,
it's being spent every day.
So first of all, I mean, the fraud would suggest that he's done something that is financially legal, so he hasn't done anything as far as we know. So that, but
as in how he got into position.
Okay, so how he got into position, but that is the way the Tory party elect their leaders. So their system is how it works, and they followed their system to the T. They even tried to change it a bit so that they couldn't get Boris back, or some people tried to change it so that they could get him back. Basically, look, if you get rid of the Tory party, and I'm not saying that they are the best, because, I mean, they have been woefully inadequate, and I would like to have somebody to support the way they've behaved, but it's there in front of your very eyes. So I'd be mad to say that they've done a good job, but we have to consider the alternative here, because it is Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party who are equally as fractious. So they have their affinity to the unions, they've got their affinity to the sort of Islington sect. They are turning into a Tory party before our very eyes. Their policies are what I would say are more conservative than Conservative Party. But remember, the unions right now, there's all the striking, and they are beholden to the unions, and that's...
Exactly. This is the thing with the unions. Last Wednesday saw 500,000 people striking.
Exactly.
So you've got, obviously, uni lecturers, train drivers, you know, the Royal Mail teachers, nurses, barristers... Who,
So what's Keir Starmer's strategy? Tell us that now.
Of course I don't know Keir Starmer's strategy.
No, nobody knows.
But this strategy, it ain't working, is it? It ain't working at all. I mean, and you know, the Tories' idea to get rid of these strikes is to change the law so that people can't strike. I mean, what is this?
No, that's not right, because in other countries, this particular law, and it's not so they can't strike, actually, what it is to give them criteria with which, and that's only fair, because especially if it's public services, which is coming out of our taxes that we are paying for, then if they are not happy, and bear in mind their salaries are negotiated by independent pay bodies who will determine what they get pay rises annually most of the time, not always in line with inflation, but they also have pensions, certain securities that those in private companies don't have. So if you take that into account, then...
But also they wanted to come out of the Court of Human Rights, and we've slipped down to number 14 in the Europe for LGBTQ rights, and down to number 14 that we used to be number 1 5 years ago.
Can I just say, though, what does Keir Starmer actually stand for? He sits on the fence. You know, even on with the strikes, he won't go on the picket lines. What is it? I'm sick. We need a change, but not Starmer. We need a change. Like Farage, Richard Tice. Come on, reform.
But that's never going
to
happen.
We need a change. We need a change.
Why is it not going to happen if people don't vote for it?
Well, because people aren't going to vote for... I mean, it'd be a wasted vote. The same reason why people don't necessarily vote for Lib Dems anymore. They're going to vote for Labour because Labour have a chance of getting in. Yeah. And at the moment, I don't think people care about what Keir Starmer's going to do. They just want a different party to see what... Because they couldn't possibly be any worse.
But people are sick of this circus. It's a circus of clowns. It is a circus. And sadly, with Rishi, he's left us in the political wilderness because he's gone so liberal. He might as, you know, be...
He's not liberal.
He has. No, but because he's so close with Labour.
What about his pledges?
There's a paper thin between Labour and Tory.
One of which was to halve inflation, which, as we know, is coming down anyway. To grow the economy, well, you couldn't shrink it any further.
Exactly.
If it shrinks any further, I'm not going to make a joke.
Still need stilts if it shrinks any further.
No, I got told off last week.
You can't buy height. Sorry. Anyway,
exactly. Yeah, but there's another thing. I mean, Rishi went missing, didn't he? I mean, we got 100 days. I mean, nearly half of that. He ghosted the country. We couldn't find him. Kept saying, was he under your chair, Nana?
I know.
But, you know, as a leader, he's been so underwhelming. I feel so disappointed in Rishi after his big PR, you know, videos. And after backstabbing Boris, for me, that sticks in the back of my throat.
But Stephen Pound made a point that it ain't over until the fat lady sings. He didn't use those exact words, but his point was that there is still a chance for the Tory party. And we have still got time. So if they improve the economy substantially, would you consider them as an option?
That would have to be such a massive turnaround. And as I just said, the stench of corruption and all the billions they've written off in unusable PPE, like the cronyism, I mean, like... All of that reeks, and not even be able to sort their taxes out. I think there would have to be such a massive turnaround for them to even come close. But they will lose, and they'll lose seats. But it's about how many they'll.
What if Boris was back?
Well, if Boris was back, I have to say, I never thought I'd say this. Do you know what? I would vote because he's box office. He's got personality, and you know what? I watch Rishi, and I just lose the will. As I said, it's like a Sunday sermon that is just so boring. I'm sorry, every interview he does. It's just like it's fake, and he just isn't genuine, and he's not going to get the votes. We've got 500 days to the next election. He better start acting. It's all spin, waffle, and no action.
Johnson might be box office, but he's National Lampoons if he is. You know what I
mean? He's not.
He's entertaining.
He's more Forrest Gump.
And if it weren't for Boris, you know what? His support with the Ukraine war, the other Western leaders wouldn't have gone in. Well, and it's down to Boris.
Well, OK, let's see what you think there, because this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go? Should we go over to our regular? Let's go to Bristol.
Oh, my favourite.
And we love Lee, don't we? Let's have a chat with Lee Harris. Lee, can they turn this mess around? Hello. Can they turn this mess around? Surely.
I'm still trying to get over the shock of finding out that Sam voted Conservative in 2 elections. What's going on there? You think you know someone, Nana?
I know. But what's happened to him?
It's going to take a miracle. It's going to take a miracle. But I think there might be a way they can turn this round. The problem is, I'm not entirely convinced the Conservatives actually want to win the next election. It feels like they've given up. ditching Boris was a huge mistake, and it's clear that Rishi's not cutting through. The polling is diabolical. But what the Conservatives need to do is they need to dig deep and find their passion for conservatism. They need to emphasise what separates them from the Labour Party, like, for example, being at the forefront of fighting an increasingly dangerous woke ideology. Some people say there isn't much difference between Labour and the Conservatives, and in some respects they're right. But there are important cultural differences between the two parties, and this is the point I want to make, because not a lot of people are pointing this out. A really good example and recent example is the SNP's disgraceful gender recognition reform bill. Look at how the two parties reacted. Keir Starmer and many prominent Labour MPs gave this insane policy their full-throated support. The Conservatives immediately said this was unacceptable and said they would veto the policy using Section 35, and thank goodness they did. For me, this is one of the most important differences between the Conservatives and Labour in terms of winning back voters, especially the red wall. The thought of a woke-infested SNP-supporting, Brexit-hating Labour Party running the country is terrifying.
Well, that is a good note to end on. You've literally just changed my mind right there, Lee Harris. Thank you very much for your views. Right, today I'm asking, can the Tories turn this mess around? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Mark says, why can't illegal migrants be housed in disused Nightingale hospitals? You know why? Because there's no staff there. That was why nobody used them.
There's no staff.
John says, they can sort out this mess, but I fear they won't. Wayne says, only if they sort out immigration and Brexit, they will do neither. So they will say that they have a plan, but we need to vote for them. Oscar says the Tories don't have a chance. Bring back Boris.
Way.
Well, that's what a lot of people are saying. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking getting rid of him, but now we know what's underneath all of that. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is at GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget as well, you can stream us live on YouTube. Coming up, it is this week's difficult conversation. I'll be speaking to a man who lost his mother during the pandemic. Tony Stoll claims a care home failed to tell his mother to tell him that his mother was going on end-of-life care. I'll be hearing from him later. Then after the break, it's Royal Roundup time. Royal biographer Angela Levin will be live in the studio to talk me through the King's coronation, the Princess of Wales' latest engagements. All of that is on the way next.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 9 minutes to 5 o'clock. If you've just joined me, welcome on board. We are GB News. We're the People's Channel. You can also download the GB News app and stream all the programmes as everything that's on the channel here. I'm Nana Akua, and coming up now, it is time for my Royal Roundup, because there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. As the King's coronation approaches, there's much speculation as to whether Prince Harry and Meghan will be in attendance, especially following the release of the Duke's controversial memoir, Spare. Also, King Charles and Camilla are finally sorting out their flat. So, as ever, every Saturday, I love to give you a rundown. And who better to do that than royal biographer Angela Levin. Angela.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see you. In orange. Great minds, right? Great minds, different shades. Good.
That's say something for us.
Well, Angela, what do you think then? So, Harry and Meghan attending the coronation. Where are we with all of that?
Well, it's very interesting, actually. I think they've made a jump because it was in a Californian paper today that they've decided not to do any more Netflix programmes about them. They were going to do fun TV. Now, I don't know that necessarily that their idea of fun would be ours, but they obviously are concerned about that and want to make light-hearted, sweetie pie programmes. But the other thing is that Harry, somebody who's very close to Harry said that Meghan wasn't around during the whole of the very difficult time of promoting his awful book because he didn't want anyone to think that she controls him. And she stayed away so that he could do it himself and she wouldn't be responsible for anything and would let him show that he can create his own jobs and he's very worthy of doing so. I don't think he is when you talk about drugs and other parts of your body, which I won't mention again, because I won't. But I don't think his book gave anybody the confidence of actually using him, getting him as increasing numbers of helping people with their mental health. I don't think any of those work. But as for them coming over, you'd think there might be a gesture of warmth or conciliation. But what Harry has done last week, was the Well Child, which was a private charity he looked after. He was the patron of, nothing to do with the royal family, but he's now calling himself royal patron. And that's absolutely appalling because in February 21, when they left, not the contract that they signed, but what they agreed with the Queen, the late Queen, was that they wouldn't use royal in anything that they're doing. So he knows exactly what he's doing. So he's just showing there's still power there. What can they do to stop him? Absolutely nothing. So it's really, he's not showing willingness. He's actually standing out there, being a bully, trying to be in control. I personally, originally felt, let them come. You know, I spent a lot of time with him in 2017, 18, and I for my biography, and I really liked him. But now I don't want him to come. I think in whatever they do, it will distract people. And I think it's definitely King Charles's moment, and they will spoil it. And the other royals would be frightened to talk to them because they think that they will take segments of what they're saying and sell them on to someone else. They can't trust him.
And also, when Harry was left to his own devices, so on some of those talk shows where he said racism, what racism and all that, it wasn't really very good at all. It was quite embarrassing, really, and actually quite contradictory to what they've said or they've allowed people to believe in the past, which I think was actually very wrong. So we move on then to Charles and Camilla. What have they been doing?
Well, they've been really busy. I think that one of the ways that they're handling this pain and agony and emotional difficulty is to keep really busy. We know that King Charles is a workaholic anyway, but they actually are working non-stop. They had 300 people coming to Buckingham Palace, West and South Asians, all sorts of types of people. They went to Manchester and they went to talk to the police and they went to an art gallery and Camilla was doing have I can't remember what the illness is, but she was going there to do illness there, to talk to people about that and make sure everybody was feeling okay. So I think they're running around. I don't know how they do it. I think it's a non-stop, several a day, and that at least helps them cope with the pain that it must be.
Yeah, because it can't be for Harry and Meghan to be people who are supposedly in touch with their mental health, to put their families through this.
Yes.
I mean, especially Meghan not speaking to her dad. His mental health must be shot to bits, especially with him being ill as well. And then, of course, putting all the others through it. Camilla, with the things that he said about her in the book, calling her dangerous and a villain. And, of course, William and Kate, that was not a particularly nice onslaught with regard to William in particular. It was just, you know, it's interesting that they are patrons of these sort of charities, or they represent these things, but they don't seem to have any empathy with people who may be going
Well, I
through
think
that.
they just see it from their point of view, and they don't actually see anybody else's point of view about these things. They can't say, well, if I say that, I'm going to help this person, or I'm going to really hurt them, so I need to be careful. But they just don't do that. It's all about me, 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 and they think that they're different. They can do things differently. But Catherine, the Princess of Wales, she's working very hard too, and it's been said that she's put it to one side and is getting on with this project she's had the last 10 years about 0 to 5-year-olds and how children are made and developed in that time. And she put out a request today for pictures of you between anyone, not just you, but anybody.
They're all on
to
my
send
phone,
a
that's all I
picture.
ever do.
And there's been loads on Twitter today of people showing themselves with a parent. And she showed herself with her father touching his hand, and she looks just like Louis, just like Prince Louis.
So what else has been going on then with the royal household? Is there any other things to speak of?
Well, I think the main thing is that we're all waiting, holding our breath about Harry and Meghan and what he's going to be doing. And I think that they're going to leave it to the last minute. And I think if they come, they're going to make a big show of themselves. And I think it will make the coronation very difficult. I think King Charles is very unlucky because he's got, apparently Prince Andrew now might want to follow Harry and do a book. He's got Harry's second book that he's threatening to do. He's got Meghan's book that's coming out. And all these things are going to come out around March, April. And so it's very, very difficult. You've got enough on your plate to go through this coronation when it's not very long since his mother died. Don't forget. I mean, he's still mourning. He loved her dearly. So, and he's an emotional person, and the pain of that is there as well. And he's got all the anxiety of all these books that are going to land and take all the front pages on papers, which I think is a great shame, really.
I know, it's just terrible, isn't it? And of course, I know your book, Camilla, doesn't that launch in America?
Yes, I'm very excited about that on the 7th. They've got an extra chapter.
Did they?
Yes, and yes, I think there's been a lot of interest in it there, and that's a key place to be, really. And the next one coming out will be Germany, and I've got 10 people who want to interview me for the German competition. So I'm very lucky and very pleased, and it's quite exciting, really.
Very busy lady. We're very lucky to get you on. Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Angela
you.
Levin. Great minds, we're both in orange. I mean, when did that happen? Come on, seriously. That's Angela Levin. She is a royal biographer. This is a GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget as well, as ever, download the GB News app. You can watch all the programme here live on GB News. Stay tuned. We've got so much more here on the channel coming up in the next hour. So good afternoon. It's fast approaching 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, coming up after 5 o'clock, I'll be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up, first of all, we'll be joined by a man who lost his mother during the pandemic. He's accusing now the care home that she lived in of putting his mother on end-of-life care without his knowledge or consent. And then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are you fed up with everything being blamed on Brexit? First, though, the latest is headlines.
Good evening, it's 5 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The family of a missing mother of two have insisted there's no evidence whatsoever she fell into the River Wire. Nicola Bully's sister, Louise, is urging people to keep an open mind and continue the search. Nicola was last seen walking her dog in Lancashire last Friday morning. Police investigating her disappearance believe she fell into the river and say there's no evidence of anything suspicious. While Nicola's sister insists the river fall is just a theory, and her friend Heather says it's all too much for the family.
As a friend of Nikki, I am struggling to see how we can take a theory as a conclusion. You know, Nikki, we need evidence to know where Nikki is, and as far as I'm aware, they have not found any evidence. So Paul and Nick's parents and sister last night, they're heartbroken. They are living a living hell. And on top of that, they have all the speculation that comes out to deal with. It's too much, it's not fair.
Health leaders are calling on the government to show initiative to end the ongoing series of strikes. The NHS Confederation says the health service will struggle to clear backlogs and struggle to improve emergency care unless action's taken. And they're warning of even longer waiting times if the current situation doesn't improve. Thousands of nurses and ambulance workers will walk out on Monday in what many are calling the biggest strike day the NHS will have ever seen. Former medical director Dr. Andrew Vallance says the ball is in the government's court.
Of course they are worried about their salaries, but it's a feeling of lack of recognition of the work that they do. And then you see, and they look at other workers in the NHS who are desk-bound, who are working normal days, and they're working 8 or 12-hour shifts without breaks. And they say, why can't we get better recognition for what we do?
16 to 49-year-olds are being encouraged to get their autumn COVID booster before the NHS scales down its vaccine programme to focus on at-risk patients. The NHS says hundreds of thousands of appointments are available up until the 12th of February for those within that age bracket. However, after that date, the jabs will only be offered to those considered to be at risk of serious illness. COVID infections in the UK have dropped for a fourth week in a row. The bodies of two British aid volunteers who died during a humanitarian evacuation have been returned to Ukrainian authorities. The families of Chris Parry and Andrew Bagshaw say the pair were attempting to rescue an elderly woman from the eastern town of Solidar in early January. The bodies were returned as part of a prisoner swap between Russia and Ukraine involving nearly 200 people on both sides. It comes as the Prime Minister spoke with President Zelensky on the phone earlier this afternoon. Rishi Sunak says he's committed to ensuring military equipment reaches the front line as quickly as possible, including tanks. Ukrainian soldiers began training in the UK earlier this week on Challenger 2 battle tanks, which Britain has agreed to supply to Kyiv. US officials say a second suspected Chinese spy balloon has been spotted moving over Latin America. It's after one was seen flying over sensitive military sites in the United States yesterday. Earlier, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, postponed his visit to Beijing, calling the move a clear violation of US sovereignty, but did say he'd be prepared to resume that visit when conditions allow. China, though, maintained it was a civilian weather airship which had merely been blown off course. A sixth police officer has been sacked for his involvement in the death of Tyree Nichols, who was beaten by police last month in the United States. The 29-year-old African-American died after being beaten by officers in Tennessee. Memphis police have named the officer in question, the sixth officer, as Preston Hemphill, saying he violated policies on personal conduct, truthfulness and compliance with regulations regarding the use of a taser. 5 other officers, who were all black, have previously been fired and charged with second-degree murder over the death of Mr. Nichols. A woman's fighting for her life in hospital after being knocked down by a hit-and-run driver whilst pushing her baby in a pram in West London. Met Police say it was called to the junction of North Hyde Lane and Raleigh Road in Southall. The woman has been taken to hospital and is in a life-threatening condition. Police say the baby was unharmed. Officers are now looking for the driver who failed to stop and are asking for witnesses to get in touch. The Princess of Wales has launched a photo-sharing campaign on social media to raise awareness of the importance of early years development. Kate led the campaign by posting a photograph of herself as a baby with her father. It's part of her Shaping Us campaign, which has drawn plenty of support from, well, the likes of rapper Professor Green and the presenter Fern Cotton. Kate's hoping people will follow suit over the weekend. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. And now, back to Nana.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and political commentator Sam Dowler. Still to come, it's my difficult conversation. And today I'll be joined by Tony Stoll, who lost his mother during the pandemic. Now he claims that their care home that she was staying in put her on end-of-life care without consent from the family. I'll be joined by Tony and a family lawyer to talk us through his plight. And for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are you fed up of things being blamed on Brexit? Now, it marks just over 3 years since Britain officially left the EU, but certain high-profile individuals have blamed Brexit for the numerous crises the UK faces, with the chief Brexit representative for the European Parliament, Guy Verhofstadt, even suggesting without Brexit there would be no Russian invasion of Ukraine. All of that on the way. Email me, gbnews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. It's time for this week's difficult conversation. Tony Stoll has accused a care home of putting his mother on end-of-life care without his family's consent during the COVID pandemic. Now, according to the family, Antonia Stoll suffered from dementia and didn't have the mental capacity to make such a decision. Her son claims he wouldn't have opted for end-of-life care if the question was put to him. Now, 2 years after her death, Tony requested to see his mother's hospital records, which he claimed stated Antonia had suspected pneumonia and was prescribed end-of-life drugs. Now, he says the decision was made 2 days prior to when he found out. But Roseville Nursing Home in Hull has said that they provided Antonia with the best care and the processes were followed with precision. Well, I'm joined now in the studio by Tony Stoll and his lawyer, Fadi Fahad. Right, well, I'm going to start with you, Tony, really, because this is such a tragic story. Talk me through, what kind of a woman was your mother?
Beautiful, inside and out, yeah. She was, she just loved life and loved everybody. And if, with her typical Spanish way, no matter who went to visit her at her home, she treated them as family, no matter who. She just loved everyone.
So she was in the care home with dementia. How long had she been at that care home? Had that been the care home she was in from the start?
No, she moved into care in 2012. She was in 6 different care homes. I think it was 6. And I saw my mum abused and neglected in all of them.
Wow. Now, obviously, you know, we're not going to name any of those care homes because we don't have enough about that. But talk me through what happened then. So the COVID pandemic hit.
Yes.
Your mother is at Roseville Care Home.
Yes.
Okay, so talk me through.
I was seeing her one day, and that's when the manager, he said to me, as from tomorrow, he said, the doors are locked. And I still didn't quite understand that. Maybe my brain didn't want to accept it. I said, does that mean I can't get in to see my mum? He said, yes. Oh, my heart just sunk. It sunk at that point. And I said to him, please look after her. And he said, his words to me were, when have we ever let you down? And I said, yes, but I could always get in.
So during her time there, then, in your view, the care home was quite good with her? Because with him saying that
the best of the 6 care homes. They were good to us. They were good to Mum. Mum always looked... There was only the odd occasion where I thought, not so good. But we were under court orders at that time. The home was under a court order to look after Mum. So for me, because the court orders were in place, I believe they looked after Mum possibly more because of that. They knew the eyes were on them. I was there continuously seeing my mum. So long story short, when the doors were locked in 2020 and I couldn't get in, I said, can I come in the window visit my mum? He said, yes, of course you can. So I'd phone up and say, hi, it's Tony, I'm coming to Mum, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. I took my 2 children with me to see their grandma. Mum always waited out the window. She looked presentable. She looked okay, but couldn't understand. She would wave me in. She wanted me to go in. Couldn't understand why I wasn't going in because we were so close, me and my mum, and I wouldn't stay outside and not go and hug her. So it was so difficult for me and heart-wrenching for me to try and get it across to my mum. I remember saying to her, Mum, I don't feel too well. I don't want to pass it to you, hoping she would understand that. It was my way of making me feel better. So bringing it down to the day, as I would always phone up, and I remember saying to the care home manager, please let me know if there's anything of my mum. He said, Tony, we always will do that. So I had that bit of hope that because I couldn't get in, they would look after Mum. So as I say, I phoned up on the 17th of May. I had no idea of anything. No idea. I was taking my dog for a walk early morning. I got my mobile phone out, as I always did, and phoned the care home. I said, hi, it's only Tony. I said, how's my mum? Not suspecting anything. And she said to me, oh, Tony, can we call you back in 5 minutes? I thought, yeah, of course you can. Must be busy. It's early morning. So I carry on walking. My phone rings. I pick it up. And the nurse manager who was on that day, on duty that morning, she said to me, and it was very, how I remember it was very matter of fact. It was like somebody had sledgehammered me. I died that moment. I literally died that moment, and I've not come back. She said to me, Tony, it was like this. How I'm saying it was how she said it to me, as if I should have known. Tony, your mum's end of life. Oh, I fell to the floor. I fell to the floor.
What does that mean when they say end of life? What does that mean in terms of the medicines, or what does that actually equate to?
Right, at that moment in time when she said that to me, I had no idea. All my brain took in was, my mum's dying. It's all I could sort of get into my head. And I didn't know what to do. The world stopped for me. Everything stopped. And then I had to get to the care home to see my mum. So I said, please inform the family. So I get to the care home. We couldn't get in. Remember, I didn't know my mum was even ill. I had no idea she was poorly, because under the contract of the Court of Protection, they were supposed to tell if Mum had a headache, if she had a fever, anything. Never mind an end of life. We weren't told. So as I got there, again, long story short, to condense it, they invited us in to watch our mum die. Even telling you now, it's heartbreaking.
So sorry to hear that. You're obviously very, very close to her.
To go and watch your mum die when you don't even know she was even ill.
So what happened then when you realised that this is what's happening?
I remember shouting, I said, get my mum an ambulance now. And they debated it. They debated it, and the whole family was outside then. And I said, get an ambulance now, now. And they started debating, and I said, look, stop the debate. Now. So the ambulance came, went into my mum, and I saw her wheeled out in the stretcher. First time I'd seen her close up. And then the paramedics spoke to me and he said, we've got your mum settled. She's with us. I said, please look after her. And as they put her in the back of the ambulance, they then said, we need a contact number of the family. And everyone just said, Anthony. So they came to me, I gave them my number, and in the afternoon, I can't remember what time it was, because, as I say, the world just stopped for me. I got a call from the hospital, the nurse who was looking after my mum, and she said, I think you should come in. So I get down and I go in, and I say, luckily, I knew the nurse who was looking after my mum. She said to me, come and see your mum, come in. He said, but you have to put the PPE on. So I put it on to be obliging. I put the mask on, the gloves, whatever else on. The curtain went across and I saw my mum. You know, that image is there. It haunts me. I'm having EMDR treatment and everything because of what they've done. And I saw her. And I went to her and I took the mask off, the gloves, everything. And I remember the nurse saying to me, Tony, I said, never mind that. I said, it's my mum. And I went and I picked her up and a hen. And I kissed her. I don't know how many times. And I said, I love you, Mum. And her eyes flickered. And the nurse said, she can hear you. I said, of course she can. And then they took her to the ward. She said, come with us to the ward. So I walk with my mum, I go in the lift, I hold her hand all the way. And the nurse said to me, you can't go into the ward. Can you please wait there? I said, of course I will. I said, please look after her. And the nurse come back to me and she said to me that, remember the first thing she said, I've explained this to Fadi and everything, hence why they've been superb with me. The nurse said to me, Tony, can I ask you a question? I said, ask me anything you want. She said, who put your mum on end of life? And I said, I don't know. I said, when I phoned up in the morning, that's what they told me. She said, your mum isn't end of life. And then I had a glimmer of hope. Like I'd been reborn. I said, oh God. She said, we're treating her. She said, this is why you can't come in. So I accepted that. That was like, the best words I'd ever heard in my life. I said, I don't mind not going in as long as you're treating her. She said, we just can't understand who's put her on end of life. So my point here is, and as Fadi and Gulbenkian and Donian have supported this, my mum's been put on end of life days before with end of life drugs. I never knew any of this. So I get her to the hospital 3 days later after being given these medications, and they're telling me she's not end of life. The next morning I get the call. My mum's gone. I went with her. But I've got a family to be there for. I'm a dad. I'm a partner. But my life, I died that day. I died.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I mean, the only good thing there is that you got to hug her.
Oh.
Because, I mean, you know, there was the whole COVID thing and people weren't even allowed to touch their loved ones, so you got that.
Oh, I did it. I just did it.
And you did the right thing.
I picked her. I've got that with me forever.
You've got that.
It keeps me smiling, that.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask Fadi now. Is that the right procedure, what happened there in Tony's case, where it would appear that suddenly his mum was on end of life without any real consultation?
That's not the correct procedure. The law's quite clear on this, is that usually when an end-of-life decision has been made, which it in itself does have a role in the sort of care landscape, because sometimes you have people with conditions that are irreversible. Sometimes it's best to put people on a pathway where they can die with dignity without having the treatment, as treatment could be distressing sometimes. But when that decision is made, it's always, the law's clear that it should be made with consultation. So the patient should be consulted, and there should be this ongoing dialogue as to what's in the best interests of the patient. And if the patient lacks mental capacity, then it will be, there'll usually be consultation with family as to what the appropriate pathway is. In this case, seemingly, from what we can look at with the records we have, and we're only looking at one side of the coin, it should be, that's fair to say, because the care home will still need to respond on this. But from what we can see, records show that a decision was made on the 15th of May 2020, so on a Friday. Bear in mind, Mr. Stow was there on the Friday, always in contact with the home, and he wasn't told on that day.
Right.
The following day, which was the 16th, which was a Saturday, again, Mr. Stow was in contact, and again, he wasn't told anything. It was only when he called on the 17th that he was then told that she's on end of life.
And you've seen these records as well, so you're...
These records, from what we can see,
see.
from that side of the coin,
Yeah.
it says a decision was made on the 15th. And of course, such decisions typically are not made in a vacuum instantly. So that's when the decision was recorded. It could have been contemplated before the 15th, which was the Friday. It could have been contemplated on the Thursday or the Wednesday. We don't know. But when it was eventually communicated, and Antonia was admitted to hospital on that Sunday, she was put on a ventilator and treated.
She was, when I say ventilator, it wasn't a ventilator as such, it was just the oxygen mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was given some sort of treatment and responded initially quite well to it, but didn't survive. But the point is, had consultation been given in the first instance, she may have had the best part of 48 to 72 hours of treatment. And who is to say that
couldn't have changed.
That could have been pivotal, that could have been vital, and it could have been the difference between life and death.
Well, listen, we are running out of time, so we've got about 30 seconds to talk to me. That Antonia's Law is something that you're... Can you tell me briefly what
it's
that
now
is?
named Antonia's Law after my mum.
Yeah.
It's for families, if they wish to do so, at their own expense, to place a camera in their relative's room. So it's not intruding on any other privacy whatsoever, and it's controlled only by the family member.
Listen, and the fight is still on. You are still pushing for this.
I'm hoping now I'm going to get the whole of Britain behind me now. This would have saved my mum. When I say saved, I would have known what really happened.
Well, listen, Tony, thank you very much for sharing that story. Really appreciate that, Fadi. Thank you also. Much appreciated. Well, of course, we requested a statement from a Rose Villa care home, and this is what they said in their response. Mrs. Antonia Stowell, a former and much-loved resident of Rose Villa care home, sadly died at Hull Royal Infirmary on the 18th May 2020. We fully understand the feeling of loss and grief her family and friends will have felt at her loss, and our sympathies are with them. Whilst a resident at Rose Villa care home and before her hospitalisation with COVID and other health issues, we believe that our dedicated and professional team provided Antonia with the very best care under the direction of her GP, a medical team, and all proper processes in the delivery of this care was followed with precision. As has been widely publicised, the COVID pandemic has hit the social care sector extremely hard. Despite the numerous challenges this has presented, the team at Rose Villa Care Home have always strived to provide the very best care for all our residents and are fully committed to delivering the highest level of care now and into the future. Well, we also contacted the Department of Health and Social Care, and a spokesperson said the universal principles for advanced care planning set out that individuals are central to developing and agreeing plans for their future care, which may include end-of-life care, and they should decide who else is involved in the process. If a person has been assessed as lacking capacity, then any action taken must be made in their best interests. The Mental Capacity Act places a duty on the decision maker to consult those interested in the person's welfare where practical and appropriate. Clinicians should work with their patient to decide on the course of treatment, ensuring the most appropriate care for that individual is the primary consideration and according for relevant guidance. Prescribers are accountable for their prescribing decisions. Well, stay with us. Coming up, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are you fed up with everything being blamed on Brexit? It's been just over 3 years since Britain officially left the EU, and certain high-profile individuals still insist on blaming Brexit for the numerous issues that the UK is facing, including immigration and the economy. That's coming up after this.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's just gone 27 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. It's time now for a great British debate this hour. And I'm asking, are you fed up with things being blamed on Brexit? It's been 3 years since Britain left the EU and it appears the Ramonas just still can't get over the fact that we voted to leave. And we meant it. Let's take a look at some of the outrageous moments. Here's Guy Verhofstadt, who was the chief Brexit representative for the European Parliament, where he claimed that Brexit could have caused the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
United Europe, certainly on defence matters, would make an enormous difference. I think maybe without Brexit, maybe there was no invasion.
Really? Then there's the BBC Match of the Day presenter Gary Lineker taking aim at GB News presenter Nigel Farage. He claimed Nigel played an important part in breaking Britain. And remember, the Independent Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey and his team couldn't help but show their true feelings about Brexit.
As a public official, I'm neutral on Brexit, per se, but I'm not neutral in saying these are what we think are the most likely economic effects of it.
The simple way of thinking about what Brexit's done to the economy is that in the period that happened after the referendum, there was the very, very sort of powerful, the biggest appreciation that any of the world's 4 major economies have seen overnight, that contributed to increasing prices, reduced wages, and I'm not talking simply through real wages, but also through nominal wages.
Well, I think some wages have actually gone up, since we couldn't get the cheap labour from the EU. Well, it appears Brexit is now to blame for the state of the economy, as if there isn't just been a global recession caused by COVID and some of the policies of our government. But it doesn't stop there. The Albanian Prime Minister blames Brexit for the current border chaos. In 2018, The Independent claimed that Brexit could be blamed for a lack of environmental standards. Ironically, the UK have adopted strong environmental standards for farmers, and people are getting sick of Brexit being blamed, now used as an excuse for every problem these days. So, the great British debate this hour, I'm asking, are you fed up with things being blamed on Brexit? I'm joined by the CEO of Competere and former trade advisor to the UK Secretary of State of International Trade and former cleared advisor to the United States Trade Representative. There's a lot there, Shankar Singham, and also former Conservative Cabinet Minister Anne Widdecombe, author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Right, I'm going to start with you, Anne, seeing as you're nearest to me. Anne, everything seems to be blamed on Brexit. Have you had enough of it?
Oh, yes, but I mean, this has been going on right from the start. You know, we had a shortage of truck drivers. Everybody said, oh, it's Brexit. What they didn't do was take into account the fact there was a shortage of truck drivers across vast swathes of the EU, even in America. Nothing to do with Brexit. And then we had the airport chaos, and people said, oh, it's Brexit. But hang on, there was airport chaos at Amsterdam, Dublin, most of all in Stockholm. You know, they hadn't left the EU. And as soon as anything goes wrong, people say Brexit. You know, we had food shortages as a result of Ukraine and the interruption to supplies. Oh, it must be Brexit. Yeah, I am actually very tired of everything being blamed on Brexit, but I must say Guy Verhofstadt has done my side of the argument an enormous favour, because by saying that the Ukraine war is attributable to Brexit must be the most clownish statement that anybody's heard in a very long time. But I think there are all sorts of things going on. One, yes, there is a cadre of people who still want to blame Brexit and get us back into the EU, certainly. But secondly, there's an enormous insularity in our approach. As I say, you know, we don't really look at what is happening elsewhere. We started moaning about our energy supplies. Germany was at that very moment rationing hot water. You know, we don't know what's going on elsewhere. We don't seem to take an interest in it. We know, certainly, that we're not making anything of Brexit. And I think this is the big problem. I heard very good arguments for coming out. I heard very good arguments for staying in. I never heard an argument mounted in the whole of the campaign for coming out and then acting as if we were still in, which is what we're doing.
Yeah, it just seems to be the case. Well, Rebecca Reid, what do you think? Is it all Brexit's fault?
I mean, I think there's a fair amount of stuff that probably is Brexit related, but also I think there probably is a sense that culturally we're aware of Brexit, and I think a lot of people have sort of 3 or 4 political things they can hold in their head at any one time, and Brexit is one of them, therefore you blame it, in the same way that I now blame all my problems on the cost of living crisis, whether they're related to that or not. But I think what frustrates me is when people regard criticisms of Brexit as being a Ramona or being anti-Brexit or trying to get back in the EU, and I think it's realistically, the Bank of England were talking about real economic facts that happened, and I can understand that if you love Brexit, it's not comfortable to hear those things said out loud, but they remain true, and therefore observing true, impactful statements about Brexit doesn't mean that you're trying to bring down the country or you hate the Conservative government. It's just trying to reflect on what's actually happened.
Well, it does if you're James O'Brien. What about Shankar Singham? What do you think, Shankar? What is the reality of all of this? Give us your thoughts.
Well, I mean, I think we've got to be clear about what Brexit is. If you're going to blame something, you need to know what it is. And Brexit was simply a decision by the British people to leave the European Union. That by itself entails certain costs. Obviously, leaving a customs union, single market, entails costs and disruption of the border, and we're always going to have those costs to deal with. But what you then do with that freedom, what kind of country you want to be is where the gains and where the opportunities are. So clearly, if you, and Anne, I think, sort of suggested this, if you leave and then don't do anything to take the benefits and take the opportunities, then you are obviously going to have only the disruptions and only the costs. But you've also got to look at it's not just COVID, the lockdowns. Obviously, if you lock the global economy down for as long as we did, you cannot expect to just simply snap back. You're going to have huge economic pain as a result of that. And obviously, you've got the Ukraine war as well. But actually, if you look back to well before even before the financial crisis, really back to even 2000, the UK has had a very big productivity problem compared with other countries. And Anne also makes a good point. We don't benchmark ourselves to other countries.
Shankar, we're going to have to move on, sadly, because I love everything you have to say there, because you're always very, very insightful. But we're running out of time. So I've got to say thank you very much to Shankar Singh. He is the CEO of Competere. Also, thank you very much to Anne Widdecombe, former Tory minister, and Rebecca Reid, who just disappeared then to do a little breastfeeding, I think. Thank you so much, guys. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. I'm over here. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue our Great British debate this hour. I'm asking, are you fed up with everything being blamed on Brexit? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also political commentator Sam Dowler. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Hello there, it's 25 to 6. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The sister of a missing mother of two has urged the public to keep an open mind and to keep searching for her. Nicola Bully went missing in Lancashire last Friday morning. Officers investigating her disappearance believe she fell into the River Wire while walking her dog. But her sister Louise insists there's no evidence whatsoever to support that theory. Police say they're not treating her disappearance as suspicious. Nicola's friend Heather says it's all too much for the family.
As a friend of Nikki, I am struggling to see how we can take a theory as a conclusion. Nikki, we need evidence to know where Nikki is, and as far as I'm aware, they have not found any evidence. So Paul and Nick's parents and sister last night, they're heartbroken. They are living a living hell. And on top of that, they have all the speculation that comes out to deal with. It's too much. It's not fair.
President Biden says the US will take care of a suspected Chinese spy balloon that's been floating over the United States. The balloon's been spotted now over North Carolina, having flown over sensitive military sites in Montana and parts of Alaska. A second suspected surveillance balloon was spotted earlier today moving over Latin America. China maintains the original balloon was a civilian weather airship which had been blown off course. The bodies of two British aid volunteers who died during a humanitarian evacuation have been returned to Ukrainian authorities. The families of Chris Parry and Andrew Bagshaw say the pair were attempting to rescue an elderly woman from the eastern town of Solidar in early January. The bodies were returned as part of a prisoner swap. Ukraine swapped 116 of its people in return for 63 sent to Russia. The Princess of Wales has launched a photo sharing campaign on social media to raise awareness of the importance of early years development. Kate led the campaign by posting a photograph of herself as a baby with her father. It's part of her Shaping Us campaign. She's hoping people will follow suit by posting similar pictures over the weekend. TV online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Don't go anywhere though. It's back to Nana very shortly.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already depressed.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind. And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236. And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's coming up to 41 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board if you've just joined us. It's time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, are you fed up with things being blamed on Brexit? It's been 3 years since we left the EU, but loads of Remainers still just can't get their heads around the fact that we've actually voted to leave, and a lot of us meant it. I'm still hearing people say, you didn't know what you voted for. Look at what's happened now. Yeah. And let's take a look at some of these outrageous comments. Here's Guy Verhofstadt, who was the chief Brexit representative of the European Parliament when he claimed that Brexit, perhaps the Russian invasion of Ukraine, may not have happened if not for Brexit.
United Europe, certainly on defence matters, would make an enormous difference. I think maybe without Brexit, maybe there was no invasion.
Come on now. Then there's the BBC Match of the Day presenter, Gary Lineker, taking aim at GB News presenter Nigel Farage. He claims that Nigel played an important part in breaking Britain. But it doesn't stop there. The Albanian Prime Minister even blames Brexit for the current border chaos. People are just...
Public official, I'm neutral on Brexit, per se, but I'm not neutral in saying these are what we think are the most likely economic effects of it.
The simple way of thinking about what Brexit's done to the economy is that in the period that happened after the referendum, there was the very, very sort of powerful, the biggest depreciation that any of the world's 4 major economies have seen overnight, that contributed to increasing prices, reduced wages, and I'm not talking simply through real wages, but also through nominal wages.
Yeah, people are sick of Brexit being used as the excuse for every problem nowadays. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are you fed up of things being blamed on Brexit? To discuss that, let's welcome to my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also broadcaster and political commentator Sam Dowler. Lizzie Cundy. It's all Brexit's fault.
Of course, yeah, and Chelsea lost. That's Brexit's fault as well. I mean, everyone blaming Brexit for everything, and there is no evidence that Brexit has had a negative impact on the UK. You can nod your head, Sam, as much as you like, but shake it. Yeah, shake it, not nod it. The UK, let's remember, we're at war, which has cost us millions. Illegal immigrants costing us millions. We've had COVID, which has cost us millions. We had trusts, disastrous
economic
budget,
disastrous,
costing us billions, and with everything else, and furloughing, which I blame Rishi for, and all the fraudulent claims there, which has cost this country dearly. So let's not blame Brexit for everything, which I know you're about to do, Sam.
No, I'm not about to blame Brexit for everything, but let's not sugarcoat the fact that the Brexit was based on lies. There was a tiny fine line between Leave and Remain, and the whole Boris bust 350 million. It was lies, and it pushed us over the line into asking for Brexit. And 57% is the average of polls of people in the UK that wish we hadn't done it. And
well, I don't know where they took those polls from. Listen, most people I speak to who voted for Brexit haven't changed their mind. You often hear a lot of these stations pick up the random person who appeared to have changed their mind since the Brexit referendum. But frankly, everybody I speak to hasn't. And I think what we are annoyed about, and what I'm annoyed about, is the Neolithic incompetence that actual Brexit has been handled with by the current people in government. They've not taken advantage of any of the opportunities. So I'm not annoyed at Brexit. What I'm annoyed about is the way it's been handled by our politicians who we gave the power to deal with it. I'm not happy with it.
It's been mismanaged, but we cannot forget that we are the only G7 country that is forecast to have an economy that shrinks in 2023.
Well, thankfully, we don't have to go through every country to have a decision made. We can make our own minds up. And let's not forget, Boris did do Brexit. He did do Brexit. The plan was it was going to be oven ready, but sadly, the Tories forgot to put the oven on.
Oven ready. It left in the oven and it burned to a cinder.
But look, the Tories have not delivered as much from leaving, and it's a botched Tory Brexit. It's a botched Tory Brexit.
Where are these trade deals that haven't materialised, for example? So many trade deals we were getting with America.
Sam, this isn't the blah, blah, blah show. Can I speak? It's a botched Tory Brexit, and I'm afraid to say the globalists are now in control and are moving now even nearer and closer to the EU. I feel it's a betrayal, and it was the people's vote. Let's not forget that.
What do you... I mean, did you vote for Brexit or did you vote to remain?
No, I voted to remain, absolutely.
But why?
I cried in the morning.
But why? Why? Because a lot of people voted... The reason I voted to leave, and I'll tell you that, was because I didn't like the fact that the wages were going down. So the amount of the influx of low-skilled labour that was coming in from the EU meant that the people who live in this country couldn't actually afford to accept those wages. So in the end, you end up with wages going down, prices rising, which is a form of inflation, even though inflation wasn't actually rising and people couldn't afford to live.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, like in...
you can't carry on with that.
A few years ago, Germany, our economy was about 90% of what Germany's was, and now it's 75%. We had the protection of the bloc, we had the economic protection, and we've just gone like, see you later.
So do you think...
And Brexit was on a knife edge, and as I said, it was pushed over the end by lies, and nothing has materialised. The trade deals haven't materialised.
No,
our economy is awful.
Listen, what I think you're misinterpreting is that people didn't vote for Brexit based on what they were told with regard to a bus. That's not why I voted for Brexit. I've literally just told you why I voted for Brexit.
But that's you.
Hang on, no. And there's a lot of people like me who voted for their own reasons as well.
Exactly.
The bus would have been the last thing that would have convinced anybody.
Yeah, but
that's not what convinced us.
No, exactly. And do you think we really
did? That's stupid.
I'm sorry, but some people are. They didn't know what it was about. That's what they said on leaflets.
Don't insult people's intelligence. They have their own reasons why they voted for Brexit, and it was one of the biggest votes. And if you go against that vote, you'll have anarchy. People voted for Brexit. And the thing is, do you want additional taxation raised to pay Brussels, do you?
They're unelected. We don't even know who they are. I don't see
unelected like Rishi Sunak.
No, but I don't see any people of colour or anything within there. There's no mix of anything. It's just a load of white people in Europe making decisions. Well, that's what it looks like to me, and they're unelected and making decisions for us.
Correct.
Right? This show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome some of our great British voices. This is your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. Today, I've got 4. Let's start with Seshni. Seshni, you've got about 35 seconds because we've talked too much today. Seshni, your view. Is Brexit to blame?
Good afternoon, Nana. Thank you for having me, and you look absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Nana, I'm a bit puzzled why everything's been blamed on Brexit. Yes, we did have an economic drain. There was a brain drain as well in terms of employment issues. But there's a COVID issues, as Lizzie said, well said, Lizzie, about the cost of living crisis, about the COVID, post-COVID, as well as the Ukraine war. I'm puzzled by Gary Lineker's comment, as well as...
We're all puzzled by Gary Lineker. I wouldn't worry, but I don't think he likes me much. Seshni, thank you very much. Let's go to Jackie Sampson. She's there in Hertfordshire. She's a newbie. Jackie, what do you think?
I think there are people who have got a very short memory. I think they forget there was a financial crisis in 2008. They forget that Brexit actually came about the beginning of the year. We had the COVID pandemic, and any problems now, I believe, are being caused by the measures taken to deal with COVID. mean, I was in the shop the other day and someone was complaining why there was not much on the shelves and blamed Brexit. And this was stuff that came from China. Because of COVID, the warehouses shut, production shut. That's why the things weren't on the shelves. I think people find it convenient. And when you look at all the scaremongering that went on, that 700,000 people would leave the financial sector. Well, they didn't.
They didn't, did they?
These are the people who know about money. They're still there.
Well, they got it wrong, Jackie. Thank you very much. Nicely done. Let's go to Jonathan Jones. They're in Cornwall. I'm waiting for the tea.
Yeah, there you go now.
Yeah, you got it, Jonathan.
Only negative people moan and blame. It's easy to blame Brexit, but no, you can't do that. There's loads of great businesses. We've got Europe's largest tea garden right here in Cornwall, and we're mapping 26 miles of tea bushes to sell into our lovely friends in Germany and France and all over the place. So don't believe a word of it. And the other thing is, I've just been in Japan with 30 great Cornish farmers, and the whole world wants our product. And the rest of Europe's waking up. They'll warm up to us again. It's just a spat, isn't it? We'll
It is just a spat. It's a cup of tea will get over everything. Very briefly, Alan McNeely, you've only got 30 seconds. Alan.
Afternoon, Nana. Yeah, I mean, there's far too many people complaining about it, aren't there, at the end of the day? I don't put all our problems down to Brexit by any means. Most of it, what we're going through, is down to COVID. There's lots to be done on it. It would be just nice to see the government, the House of Lords, the establishment, and all those people who were Ramoners actually get behind the thing and make it work. We're in charge now, so let's crack on and do it.
I love it. Let's crack on and do it. Listen, thank you very much, Alan in Grimsby, Jonathan in Cornwall, Jackie in Hertfordshire, and also Seshni in Milton Keynes. Right. Now, though, it is time for our quick-fire quiz, the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other stories hitting the headlines right now. I'm joined by broadcaster and economist Lizzie Cundy. Oh, sorry, Lizzie, press the button. No, I said Cundy, I did say that. And also, worst name in showbiz, and Sam Dowler. Let's see your buzzer. Fabulous. Right, please play along at home. Question number 1. What animal was recently rescued from a kidnapping by the police? Was it A, a pet dog, B, a cockatoo, or C, a swan? Lizzie Cundy.
B, a cockatoo.
Sam Dowler, what do you think?
Lizzie loves a cockatoo. I'm saying it's a dog.
It's a dog. There's no answer, so what's the answer?
We don't know.
You don't know because
it's a mystery.
It's a mystery.
Thank you very much. That's what you're paid for. Right, a swan. Very good. Right, panel. What do you think of that? A swan. Would you have a swan as a pet? They're apparently quite vile.
No, one spat at me. I was doing.
Oh, that bombshell.
Just like with Sam Smith.
Yeah. Right. Let's move on. God, that's a terrible video. Question 2. One man has flown to Milan and purchased a pizza for less than a Domino's delivery. But how much did his flight to Milan cost? The closest answer wins. Lizzie Cundy.
£10.
How much, Sam Brown?
£54.99.
£54.99. Let's see, the answer is £8. Lizzie Cundy's the closest one done.
No way.
Good. Right. Yes, the young influencer flew to Milan for £8 to prove how overpriced Domino's pizzas were. Cheapest flight you've ever taken, Lizzie?
Sorry?
Cheapest flight.
Cheapest flight I've ever had. Oh, it was about £100.
Oh, that's Sam.
Easy
Oh,
jet.
way less, like maybe 40, 30.
Seriously?
I got one for a £5, but then there was all the
like...
other stuff going on.
Yeah.
I had to stand. No, I'm joking. Right, question 3. Which world record was recently officially broken? Was it A, the world's oldest dog, B, the world's longest toenail, or C, the world's largest baby? Sam Dowler.
World's largest baby.
No, that would be you. No, it's the oldest dog, actually.
That'd be Lizzie.
Right, my lawyers.
It's actually Bobby. Bobby the farm dog. He's 30 years old. Has not only been named the world's oldest dog, but the oldest dog of all time.
I used to have a Bobby the dog.
Very nice. Question 4, true or false? King Charles will not be making an appearance on the Australian 5 tournament. Sam Dowler.
That is true.
Yeah.
Is it
true? It is sadly true.
It's actually true, yes. The Australian $5 banknote will not feature King Charles III. Instead, will feature a new design that honours the culture and history of the Indigenous Australians. A final question, question 5. Tennis legend Novak Djokovic won the Australian Open for a 10th time, taking his overall Grand Slam wins to 22, matching the rival Rafael Nadal. But this victory was particularly impressive. Why? Was it A, because he came back from 2 sets down to win the epic 5-set thriller? B, he had a tear in his hamstring, or C, he's a 40-year-old man? Ooh, Sam Dowler.
Hamstring.
Hamstring. Lizzie Cundy.
40 years old, I'd say.
40 years old. He had a tear in his hamstring.
Oh, well done, on, Sam.
Thank you. I'm sports all over.
Well, are you a sporty person?
No.
I don't think
I go to the gym.
Right, well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, can the Tories turn this mess around? According to our Twitter poll, 80% of you say yes.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
Positive thinking.
20% of you, well, they don't want Keir Starmer, say no. I've got to say thank you so much to my amazing panel. Lizzie Cundy, thank you very much for joining me.
Great to be here.
I love the hair, by the way. It matches the outfit.
Thank you.
Sam Dowler, looking very rosy and Jim in his pastel.
Thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you very much to you, Sam Dowler. And as ever, a huge thank you to you at home for your company. I'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. to discuss the top stories with broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Stay tuned as ever. You can join us live. Follow us on YouTube. Don't forget to download the GB News app. I'll see you tomorrow at 4. I'll leave you with the weather. Have a fabulous Saturday.
Hello again. As we go through the rest of this weekend, and many of us will see a spell of rain as a front pushes its way southeastwards. There will then also be some wintry showers in the north, but for most, Sunday's looking largely sunny. At the moment, looking at the bigger picture, we have this cold front that's making its way across the UK, and it's this that's going to bring a spell of rain to many parts as it gradually pushes its way southeastwards through the rest of the weekend. So taking a closer look at Saturday afternoon, yes, you can see a spell of rain across northern parts of England and Wales. Could be a little bit heavy at times, but going to be mostly light as it clears its way southwards overnight. Some showers through the end of the day across parts of Scotland. Could be wintry at times, but these also clearing as we go through the night, with then largely clear skies through the early hours of Sunday morning. And under these, temperatures taking a bit of a drop, fairly widespread frost across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, even a touch of frost likely across southern parts of England as we start the day tomorrow. Otherwise then, we do have high pressure firmly in control on Sunday, so we're going to have lots of calm, settled conditions and plenty of winter sunshine. That sunshine could be a bit hazy at times because of some high-level cloud, but for many it is going to be a fine winter's day. Despite the sunshine though, temperatures down a few degrees compared to Saturday, and with the light winds though, it should still feel relatively pleasant. As we go through the end of the day tomorrow, we are going to see the cloud thickening across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, perhaps a few spells of drizzly rain likely, and the wind strengthening here, but across England and Wales we're going to hold on to the clear skies and the winds will stay pretty light. As a result, as we go into Monday morning, we're likely to see a fairly widespread frost across much of England and Wales, even in towns and cities temperatures dipping a little bit below freezing for some, but milder further north and west where we have that thicker cloud. As we go through Monday itself then, a cold frosty start for many in England and Wales, and it is going to stay mostly bright, particularly towards